Welcome to another deep dive. We've got some really captivating sources this time around, all about Bob Camblin. He was a Houston artist, taught at Rice University, collaborated on some wild projects, and then, well, he kind of just disappeared from the art scene. But today, we're going to focus on one of his pieces, his lithograph, Cosmic.
Oh, yeah, cosmic. Interesting choice.
Yeah, and we're going to try to understand it through all these different lenses, like Zen Buddhism, the I Ching, even the arts and crafts movement. Should be fun.
A lot of people might just see cosmic as a striking image, but the sources you sent over suggest there's a lot more to uncover, so I'm in.
Exactly. And Camblin's life story only adds to the mystery. I mean, this guy taught at Rice, did all these collaborative projects, and then poof, gone. Like he intentionally stepped back from it all.
It's true. It makes you wonder what he was thinking. It definitely makes exploring his artwork even more intriguing.
Totally. And there's this one anecdote from the Remembering Bob Camblin source where he's wearing a Mr. Peanut costume. I mean, what's that about? It just makes you want to dig deeper, you know?
Oh, I love that. Sometimes knowing even a tiny detail about an artist's life can change how you see their work.
Okay, so let's get into the lithograph itself. Cosmic has this really detailed border filled with trees, hearts, vines, all these organic shapes, and they're all woven together in these intricate patterns.
Yeah, that border, it grabs your attention right away. It's like it's pulsating with energy.
And right in the center, there's this quote by Ralph Waldo Emerson, and it's surrounded by, get this, a huge infinity symbol. Visually, it's a lot to take in, for sure.
Maybe that's the point, right? Like he's trying to show us how everything's interconnected by kind of overwhelming us with all these details.
Which leads perfectly into the Zen interpretations.
Mm.
One source pointed out that this intertwined border could represent non-duality. That's that Zen idea that there's no real separation between the self and the world. Everything's connected.
Yeah, non-duality is a really important concept in Zen Buddhism. It's about how the separation between things is basically an illusion. We're all connected, like you said.
So visually, it's like Camblin is showing us that idea in Cosmic, right? The text of the quote blends in with all the images of nature in the border.
Exactly. Thoughts, words, nature, it's all flowing together in this interconnected web. And he's showing it to us, not just telling us.
And there's also the infinity symbol. One source said it could represent the Zen idea of impermanence, that everything's constantly changing, going through these cycles of renewal.
In Zen Buddhism, embracing that impermanence is actually seen as a way to free yourself from suffering. It's about learning to accept the ever-changing nature of reality.
So we're seeing these huge Zen ideas, non-duality and impermanence, visually expressed in Cosmic through how it's composed and all the symbolism.
Right. And it's interesting to think about whether Camblin meant to do that or not.
No, that's a huge question. Does the meaning come from the artwork itself, or are we, the viewers, bringing it to the piece?
Yeah, I mean, is there even a single right answer? Makes you think, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It gets right to the heart of how we interpret art.
And speaking of different interpretations, remember you mentioned the I Ching? Well, I'm really interested in how cosmic connects to hexagram 48, the well.
Yeah, that's a really fascinating connection. But before we get into that, can you give us a quick intro to the I Ching? I'm sure some listeners aren't familiar with it.
Sure. It's an ancient Chinese text, been used for divination and wisdom for centuries. It uses a system of 64 hexagrams, each with its own meaning and representing a different situation in life or a kind of energy.
Okay, so where does the well fit into all of this?
Hexagram 48, the well, it's all about nourishment, an inexhaustible source of abundance. It's about being able to tap into this wellspring of energy that's always there.
Okay, now I see where you're going. So how does this connect to Camblin's Cosmic?
Well, if we look at cosmic through the lens of the well, maybe the Emerson quote in the center is like the source of wisdom, like the words themselves are the well.
And the crazy ornate border with all those patterns and details, it would be the ever-replenishing energy, right? Surrounding and supporting the well.
Right. It's like Camblin is literally showing us the well visually. The quote's the source, and the border is the energy flowing out from it.
But remember, we talked about how Camblin wasn't really into organized religion or spirituality.
Right. He was more of a free spirit, exploring things without being tied to one specific set of beliefs.
So does that mean his art can still be a, well, a source of spiritual whatever, even if he didn't specifically intend it to be? Does meaning just exist on its own, apart from what the artist was thinking?
And it makes you think about us, the viewers, right? Are we just finding meaning that's already there, or are we making it up as we go?
Wow, that's a big question. Feels like we're onto something way bigger than just one piece of art. We're talking about meaning itself.
That's what I love about art. It can lead us to some really deep questions. And speaking of which,
You're thinking about that arts and crafts movement connection, right?
yeah, we haven't even gotten to that yet, and it's really important for understanding cosmic.
Okay, so let's get into this arts and crafts connection. To be honest, when I first saw that, I was kind of confused.
Yeah, it's not super obvious at first glance, is it? But once you really start looking at the ideas behind the arts and crafts movement, and then you look closely at cosmic, it starts to make sense.
Yeah, one of the sources mentioned how cosmic reflects the movement's big emphasis on nature and craftsmanship. You see it in those intricate details of the border, the choice to use those organic motifs, like the trees and the vines. It all fits that arts and crafts aesthetic.
It totally does. Remember, the arts and crafts movement came about in the late 1800s, basically as a pushback against the whole Industrial Revolution thing, all that mass production. It was a call to return to handmade things, natural materials, and just a deep appreciation for finding beauty in simple things.
And you can definitely see that handcrafted feel in Cosmic. Just the technique of lithography itself shows how skilled Camblin was.
It's not just the technique, though. Look at the subject matter, right? Trees, hearts, vines, these are all pulled right from nature. And nature was central to arts and crafts philosophy. It was about finding inspiration in nature and making it a part of everyday life.
So maybe Camblin was trying to express those same values through his art. Even if he wasn't officially part of the movement, maybe these ideas were just floating around at the time, influencing artists in different ways.
That's a really cool idea, like a collective unconscious or something, these themes just resonating across different fields and art forms.
And then there's that connection to Romanticism. You mentioned that earlier, but I'm not totally sure how that fits in.
Well, Romanticism, think back to the 1700s and 1800s. It was all about emotions, intuition, and celebrating the individual. It put a lot of emphasis on personal experience and the connection to nature.
Now that you mention it, I can see those themes popping up in Cosmic. The quote itself is about transcendence and the power of the human spirit, right?
Exactly. And remember, Emerson, the guy who wrote that quote, was super into those romantic ideals. So by including his words in Cosmic, Camlin is tapping into that same way of thinking.
And all those crazy, intricate details, the swirling patterns in the border, they all feel super emotional and evocative.
That's a great point. It's not just a heady intellectual thing. There's a real feeling of passion and depth there, which speaks to those romantic sensibilities.
So it's like Camlin is weaving together all these different threads, philosophy, spirituality, artistic stuff, all into this one piece that really makes you think.
And he's doing it in a way that's so visually appealing and smart. The fact that we can look at Cosmic through so many different lenses says a lot about his talent.
Okay, so we've talked about Zen Buddhism, the I Ching, the arts and crafts movement, and Romanticism. Is there anything else we need to consider to really understand Cosmic?
There's one more source that I think adds another really interesting layer to how Camblin approached art. It's called Zen and the Art of Enlightenment, and it focuses on Camblin's illustrations, but it calls them visual koans.
Visual koans, what does that even mean?
So a koan in Zen Buddhism, it's like this riddle or statement, often paradoxical, that's meant to challenge how we think. It's about breaking through how our logical mind works, to help us reach a deeper understanding.
Okay, but how can an illustration be a visual koan?
Well, according to this source, Camblin's illustrations, they're not just there to be pretty, right? They're actually designed to mess with our thought patterns and make us question what we think we know.
So it's not about just looking at the art. It's about actively engaging with it and letting it change our perspective.
Yes. The book describes Camblin's drawings as these visual riddles meant to provoke us, make us think differently. And it's through that process, that wrestling with the unexpected, that maybe we can experience a shift in consciousness, a moment of insight.
Wow, that is so cool. It changes how I look at his work completely. It's almost like he created this whole visual language to explore Zen ideas.
And that's where the idea of everyday enlightenment comes in. The book really pushes this idea that enlightenment isn't some big, far-off goal. It's something we can find in the ordinary stuff, everyday moments, if we just know how to look.
And Camblin's illustrations, by acting as visual koans, they can actually help us see those moments of enlightenment in places we wouldn't expect.
Exactly. They're like little reminders that the path to enlightenment isn't about running away from the world. It's about finding a deeper connection to it.
So looking at Camblin's work this way, we're not just admiring how good of an artist he was. We're also going on this journey of self-discovery and spiritual exploration.
That's the incredible thing about art. It can be way more than something pretty to look at. It can actually be a trigger for growth, transformation, even enlightenment.
And it's mind-blowing that all of this can be found in just one lithograph.
It says a lot about how deep and complex Camblin's work is. And it shows how powerful symbols and archetypes are, how they can bring out so many different meanings and interpretations.
Okay, so we've looked at the symbolism, the philosophical connections, the influences from different art movements. What do you think is the most important thing to take away from all this?
You know, what really stands out to me is this idea that meaning isn't always fixed or set in stone. It can actually grow organically through this interaction between the artwork, the viewer, and the context.
Yeah, it's like the meaning of cosmic is always evolving, changing, as we bring our own experiences and perspectives to it.
Exactly. And that's what makes art so dynamic, so captivating. It's not just a thing, it's like a living, breathing thing that can speak to us in different ways throughout our lives.
So maybe there isn't one real meaning of cosmic that we can just define and be done with it. Maybe it's something that unfolds, reveals itself over time as we keep coming back to it.
And it brings us right back to that question we asked before. Is the meaning already there in the artwork itself, or is it something we're creating through our own interpretations?
Right. And after this deep dive, I'm starting to think it might be a little bit of both.
Maybe it's not one or the other, you know? Maybe meaning comes from this interplay between the artist's intention, what the artwork is itself, and our own unique perspective as viewers.
Like we're all working together to create the meaning.
I love that. And it shows how art can connect us, not just to ourselves, but also to each other and to something bigger than ourselves.
Okay, I need a minute to let all of that sink in. This has been a lot. Let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll wrap up everything we've learned and talk about what it all means for you, the listener. All right, we're back. I don't know about you, but I'm still processing all of that. Zen Buddhism, the I Ching, the arts and crafts movement. We've covered so much, and it all comes back to this one lithograph, cosmic.
It is pretty wild, right? How one piece of art can be a gateway to all these different layers of meaning. It just shows how talented Camblin was. But I think it also says something about art itself. It can hold so many truths, resonate with us in different ways, you know?
Absolutely. It's not about finding the one right answer. It's about being okay with the ambiguity, the mystery, letting the artwork spark our own insights and connections.
And what I find so fascinating about cosmic specifically is that it works on both a symbolic and an experiential level. We can pick apart all the symbolism, the infinity symbol, the quote, the nature imagery, and get all this intellectual meaning from it. But then there's this gut feeling, this emotional response that the artwork pulls out of you too.
Like it goes right past your brain and speaks to something deeper.
Exactly. And that's where the Zen and the I Ching stuff gets really interesting. It's not just about ideas, it's about ways of being, ways of experiencing the world.
So it's not enough to understand the concepts. You have to live them, feel them, let them change how you see things.
And that's where this whole everyday enlightenment thing comes in. It's not about reaching some big transcendent state. It's about finding those moments of clarity, peace, connection right here in our normal lives.
And Camblin's art, with its beauty and complexity and all that ambiguity, can help us have those moments.
Absolutely. It can push us out of our routines, our usual ways of seeing, and open us up to new possibilities.
So we've looked at cosmic from every angle. The symbolism, the philosophy, the different art movements. What does it all mean for the people listening? What can they take away from this deep dive?
That's a great question. And there's no one answer, right? It depends on what speaks to each person. But if I had to pick one thing, it would be this. Never underestimate how much meaning and depth can be hiding in seemingly simple things.
Like there's that saying, there are more things in heaven and earth, Horatio, than are dreamt of in your philosophy.
Exactly. We walk around with these blinders on sometimes, missing so much of the beauty and mystery and wonder all around us. But if we stay curious, keep an open mind, look deeper, we might be surprised by what we find.
And you don't have to go to some far-off place or do anything fancy. It can happen right here, right now, in our everyday lives.
It could be a work of art like Cosmic, or a walk in the park, a conversation with someone you love, even just a quiet moment to yourself.
The important thing is to be open, to let go of what you think you know, and let yourself be surprised.
And you never know. The most ordinary things might actually be doorways to something extraordinary.
So that wraps up our deep dive into Bob Camblin and his lithograph, Cosmic. I hope you've enjoyed it. Take some time to think about what really stuck with you today. What new ideas did you get? What questions are you left with?
And how can you take what you've learned and apply it to your own life? What seems simple in your world that might be worth a closer look, a deeper exploration? What wisdom and meaning might you find if you dig a little deeper?
Thanks for joining us for another deep dive. We'll see you next time for another journey into the unexpected.